Welcome to exercise 2b. I split exercise 2 up into two separate movies just to make things a little bit more manageable for you as the viewer. So I'm continuing directly from where I left off in the previous exercise, and I'm just going to start up a new project. Now, when I do that, I will automatically and always get a window up asking me whether I want to save. Even if I've just saved like 2 seconds ago, it will still let me know, just for safety's sake, whether I want to save one more time. I can also retain the cached renders as well. This is actually a really useful way of keeping things on your hard disk so that it's going to be a lot quicker for you to work with next time you open the project up. Okay, so let's come into our new project now. I'm going to import a clip. I'm going to take the background rotate 1 and come into my advanced options over here and set this to frame number. Give this a frame offset of 1 just to make it simpler. My frame range here is going to be from 0 to 121. The frame rate is 25 frames a second. It's square pixels, so the pixel aspect ratio is HD, and the field's off. Okay, and let's give this a proper name, B001, overwrite that. Okay, and let's take a quick look at the footage itself. So I want to be inserting or actually tracking something over here on this particular side of the whatever the set happens to be here. Now this goes out of frame about here, a little bit beforehand on frame 89. So I really don't need to be worried about the rest of the footage. So this gives me a good excuse to take a quick look over here. So on here I've got 3 different numbers. I've got my project in point, my project out point, and my current frame. Now I can set my project out point in the same way that I could set the layer properties up here to set the layer in and out point. So just using these buttons, if I hit the set out point here, then this moves my project out point to this area over here, and I can reset that if I want to by just clicking on this other button over here. Let's set that back up. Now if we're working with a relatively small area on a larger clip, what we can also do is we can zoom our timeline directly to those in and out points so that we're not concerned with the rest of the clip. And if we want to zoom out again to see the entire range of the clip, we can just click on this button here, and that will let us see the entire clip duration again. But let's just work on this area here. Okay, so this poses a couple of problems that we didn't have before in the previous shot. Again, we've got the same issue that we had before with a large flat surface with no real sort of discernible decent markers for tracking. So point tracking is going to be out of the question on this shot. But we're going to do the same things we did before. I'm going to come up to my X-spline tool and just generate up an X-spline mask. And let's take that entire range there. Now this is quite interesting. Now what we're looking at here is 2 separate planes. We've got one plane here and one plane here. But as we look at them through here, actually the distance that the camera is from this structure is basically flattening out the differences between these 2 here. So actually both of these shapes look coplanar. So really both of these separate planes could possibly be tracked as one shape because they're sharing the same movement. So we might not have to restrict ourselves to just tracking this area here. We could also come out and track some of this part too. And I'm going to call this post track. Looks like a post, some weird structure anyway. Let's come down here to our pre-processing. The input channel, so luminance, well, there's probably a decent amount of luminance difference here that we'll be able to get a good reading, but let's give the auto channel a go just to see how we work out with that. Minimum percentage of pixels used is set to 30%. Now Mocha Pro is generally fairly good at setting the default pixels that we're wanting to use. So if we're working with a standard definition frame and we're working on an area that's fairly small, fairly limited, this number by default is probably going to be fairly high, probably 90%. If we're working on a larger frame with a larger shape, this number is going to be a lot lower, maybe as low as 20%. So I would stick, to begin with anyway, I would stick with the default percentage of the pixels used, and then if things aren't going your way, work from there. Under motion, well, I only really want to have the rotation in here, but obviously that's also going to give me translation and scale as well. Do we have large motion? Yes, we do. So I'm going to keep large motion turned on. So that's large motion between the frames. Yeah, that's a significant amount of motion. So our search area we can leave at auto, and the angle, even though it is rotating, I'm going to leave that at 0 just to see what we can get automatically without changing anything. So let's just track that backwards first. And you can see that even though this pole is rotating, or actually the camera's rotating, the pole's staying the same, but even though it's rotating in the image and we have our angle set to 0, we're still able to track that rotation without any problems whatsoever. And as more and more of our object goes out of frame, I'm going to start to just bring this shape in just a little bit. And you see it's completely lost it towards the end. So if we need to maintain accuracy here, we're going to have to change a couple of things. I'm going to change this now to luminance, change my minimum percentage of pixels used up higher, because we're obviously getting some significant errors turned in, and I'm going to see if I've got any more interesting texture to track, because basically the problem we've got here is that the texture we've got here could pretty much be anywhere along this ridge. So maybe by bringing in a little bit of the shadow down here, let's try and bring in a slightly greater amount of that shadow there, and maybe even a little bit of the background as well. Just holding down the X key there just to bring my pan tool up. So maybe bringing in just a tiny bit of the background here could also help to get the separation between those two a little bit more marked there. So you can see here that's now holding a good deal better than it did before. So let's come in and check the accuracy of that track. So I'll turn my surface on and turn my spline off. Bring this in here, get this relatively lined up where I need it to. Turn my grid on so that I can properly line this up. So I know it's going to be lined up when the grid is sitting on the same plane as it is here. So you can see that's all nice and accurate. What I'm looking at here is this straight line is going along there. I'm looking at this straight line going down here, and this line following down there. So let's play this back and see if there's any nasty jolts that's going on within the grid. Might expect a little bit of a jolt towards the end there. A little bit there. So what I'll do at that area there is come in and turn my grid back off, turn my shape back on, and see if I can get a better result here. So turn my minimum percentage of pixels up a bit higher again. Now the weird thing about this is that if you've got a particularly tricky bit of footage that's jumping around all over the place, you can find that you'll get a better result by turning this percentage of the pixels used down rather than up. Now I'm going to come in and take a look at our keyframe part over here. So this is where we control all of our keyframes. So as you can see, as I started to change the shape up, I got a keyframe mark automatically placed down for me, and I can skip between the keyframes using these little buttons down here. I can add keyframes at frames where there are no keyframes, or if I do have a keyframe here, I can come in and delete my keyframe at that point. I can also delete all keyframes on this particular parameter. Don't really want to do that at this time, so I'm going to leave that unpressed. We now have our 2 keyframe buttons here. This A is auto keyframing. When we have that turned on, every time I make a change to the shape here, it's going to add another keyframe for me on the timeline. Now, if I turn this off and try and make a change to our shape, it's not going to let me do it. It's only going to let me change the shape if I'm actually on a keyframe. So that's great to remember when you've got your shape pretty much turned on the way you want it, and you're just sort of going in and tracking everything through and trying to make small changes. And you don't want to add, thousands of keyframes. Just turn that off there. Now the Uber keyframe we will be looking at, it's the blue one here, we'll be looking at in the context of a different exercise. But basically what this does is it changes every keyframe in our in-to-out range on the timeline the same amount. So if I were to move this so many pixels over to the right, it would mean that even on this keyframe here, I've moved this one the same proportionate number of keyframes over to the right. So this is great when we're coming back and wanting to do a little bit of a refine to a particular shape. For example, if we wanted to add a bit more softness to a shape, but not fantastic when we are wanting to just make some small changes to a particular keyframe. So it's really, really important that once you make your overall changes here, that you turn the Uber key back off. Because if you don't remember that, it's all too easy to muck up your timeline and muck up all the work that you've done just by sort of thinking that you're going in and making small changes to one keyframe and then having to come back and figure out why things aren't working exactly as you planned them to. So once that's done, turn the Uber key off. You can turn auto keyframe back on if you want to as well. There we go. Okay, so I've changed my shape there. Let's track this forwards once more. And we're slipping once again. Let's try and broaden this out just a little further. And as more and more of our pixels go out, we drop that down. Cool, okay. So let's see what that's done to our grid. That's helped quite a bit. There is actually a little bit of a camera jolt in the actual footage as you watch it through. So that's actually pretty good. I'm going to be happy with that. So let's check it one more time. Just going to come in and I'm going to change this here. I'm going to insert my logo one more time. Hit play. Turn my surface off. Still got a bit of a jump. I'm not really happy about that, but I'm going to leave it for now. I'll show you how to come in and deal with that in another exercise. Cool. What I want to show you now is actually how we can start linking different layers together. Now, I said that these two, even though they're on different planes, the actual movement that they've got is coplanar because of the way that the camera shot it. So what I can do is create another surface that goes on this side of the pole using the exact same track we had here. So when I'm done with the track, I'm going to turn off the tracking data here because I don't want to accidentally write over all of the tracking data that I've already got. And I'm going to lock the track whenever I can. So if I don't need to do any more work with it, lock the track. I'm going to create another layer. And I could also have just duplicated the layer that I've got for this particular thing, but I want to show you something else we've got here. And I'm going to call this post 2 track. Could be side 2. And I'm not really going to track this again because we've already got our tracking data here. So what I'm going to do is come down to my layer properties here and go link to track, post track, and you'll see that automatically my entire timeline down here turns blue, which means I'm taking the tracking data from our other track here, from that other layer, the one we've actually already tracked. So come in with my surface, bring that up. Come in with my my grid, make sure that that's all looking nice. I'm not going to spend too much time on this, doesn't have to be 100% accurate. Come in and I'm going to insert the logo again. Turn that off, turn that off. And let's just play that forward. And you'll see, could have done with just turning that surface around. Let's do that. So we can see that a little bit better. There we go. So from the tracking data of just one track, we can link multiple layers to that and then export those out to our compositing program. So I'm going to take another pause here. We've looked in this exercise at changing up the minimum percentage of pixels used. We've looked at changing the input channels here and how we check the accuracy of the track using the surface and the grid layers, and also how we link certain layers together. Now, when we come back, what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how we can start to build outwards a little bit from just having a very small amount of information to having a much bigger shape going on, and how that works out perfectly so long as everything is coplanar. We'll also be looking at the difference between shear and perspective.